Alright, so let's talk about the Singularity. So the Singularity came out yesterday in Dead by Daylight, and I kind of just want to talk about his design of his power and mostly the EMPs. I'm gonna start off with like just list a few like positives about this about the killer. First of all, he's really fun to play. His power is really unique. It's got chase potential. It's got gen protection potential, and it's all really fun. And all goes together well. And the perks aren't half bad either. They kind of need sort of other perks and powers that go with them. They're not ones you can just shove on any killer and mostly be fine. Like Deadlock, you could play that on majority of killers and you'll be fine. You're not going to be experienced that with these perks, but there is potential for creativity and unique builds at least. But the main thing I do want to talk about is the issues with his power, and more specifically the EMPs. The EMPs are, bluntly to put, far too strong. You can literally spend about half the match not having a power or having a very reduced power if you want to count, being able to look through the biopods and not be able to do anything as a power. I would hesitate to call that a power, because you look through it, you see three people on a gen. What are you gonna do to stop that? Absolutely nothing, you know. But besides that, you're gonna not have your power for a long period of the map, uh, at match. Sorry, and the problem comes with basically from how often you get those EMPs. I don't think I saw people not have an EMP like 80% of the time. Most of the time they had an EMP and they were ready to use it either to disable biopods near gens or cleanse themselves mid chase so I can use the power in chase uh, consistently. And it becomes a problem when you have a killer who doesn't have a power for most of the match. This is a similar issue to Myers, where for the first 2 minutes he doesn't really have a power. He has to get to from tier 1 to tier 2, and then he has to get to tier 2 to tier 3 to actually have a usable power. And then when he uses that power, he has to use it correctly, otherwise he just wastes it, because if you don't get enough downs with that tier 3, uh, you've wasted your power and you have to get back up to that tier 3, and you've wasted resources and that sort of thing. So it's a similar issue where you have no power for an extended period of time. And I can understand why it's like this, but there needs to be further adjustments. Why it's like this is because they were trying to avoid a 3-gen situation again, similar to what they had with Skull Merchant. If these biopods are always accessible on these gens, it is very easy to have like a 3-gen situation. I was able to kind of get away with this in one match, where people weren't using EMPs too much, but they were still using the EMPs a lot. So it wasn't really the most effective 3-gen strategy, but it is definitely possible against weaker teams. But against even slightly competent survivors, your biopods are going to be disabled most of the time in matches. So this 3-gen situation isn't really going to happen. And like I said earlier, you're probably just going to be using these biopods to see that people on there, go to that area, the person's run off 20 minutes ago, and you just replace it, they EMP it again, and you just repeat constantly. It just leads to this sort of stalling game until you can finally, catch somebody lacking. And it's not very interactive for either side, and it's very boring. So there are like multiple issues with the EMPs. They passively print throughout the match. There's not a finite amount of the EMPs. You constantly have EMPs. They're printing throughout the match. You could basically speed them up as well with interacting with them, and this is fine, but I feel like it needs to take longer to do, because it's just insane how often they have these EMPs. You should be used strategically. They should be a resource that you can use to counter them, not just a way to completely negate the power. And there's multiple ways they can address this. They could either remove passive printing, which I think would be maybe a bit too much, or greatly slow it down so that you need to interact with it for longer to print an EMP on demand. I think one of these would need to happen so there's less of the EMP, so wise usage of them is far more important. And then, the Singularity has his power up more. Another issue is that it does too much, and I think the area is a bit too big, at least on certain maps, especially two-story maps. If you use one or a two-story map, so say Midwich, and there's ones below you or a person below you, you can get rid of them, the infection on them, a bunch of biopods, and the infection on yourself with one EMP. The EMPs do way too much too easily. I think that's what I'm going with here. Sorry, this is sort of like a ramble video. I haven't really written like a script or anything, so forgive that. But yes, that is an issue as well. And I think another issue is the fact that it can be used mid chase very easily. Comparing it to stuff like Wesker and Nemesis, who also have similar things where, the vaccine with the Nemesis or the first aid sprays with Wesker, you can't use these mid chases because you have to stop and stand still to use them. But for some reason with the EMP, you can move around a bit at a walking pace. Actually, no, I think you can actually run with it. I think you can actually run around with it and do the EMP mid chase, which makes it a rubbish chasing power as well. And this is kind of the issue I'm having. Like it's kind of a gen protection power, but also a chase power, and it kind of just coalescence. It kind of just combines into this power that's not good at either of them, and it just both really weak and just kind of leaves it with a killer that can't do either too well and leaves it pretty weak. So what can actually be done about this? Well, as I said earlier, first issue would be making it so that EMPs are not up as frequently. I saw a suggestion somewhere, which was like make it so the passive gain only goes up to a certain percent, like 90%. So if you want to do it mid chase, you can't because you have to stop and chase it. I've seen people grab EMPs mid chase, which is very, very annoying. I think that's something that needs to be addressed. Two, I would have it make it so you have to stand still to use the EMP. I don't think you should be using EMPs during chase because you can just completely deny the power, grab another EMP, and then do it again. It just makes the power not useful, and I feel like it should be focused into a powerful chase tool instead of this 3-gen tool because they obviously want to avoid the 3-gen slash gen camping tools that they've previously given killers like Skull Merchant, who's probably going to receive a decent rework in the future, I assume. I think they've said something about that, but don't quote me on that. So I think they should do that as well, just to make it so it's a better chase perk. Because it's not even that strong of a chase perk. The speed up isn't massive if the survivor is in a decent area, and most people will just pre-drop pallets. So the pallet breaking thing isn't too much, and it's if you break it normally, it's just like having brutal, and most people know how to play around brutal these days. So the chase power isn't as strong as people think. So being able to disable it just makes it super, super weak. So removing that would at least make it somewhat usable chase power. Another thing I would like to do is lower the EMP range. I think this needs to be happen just because of two-story maps. I think one thing that might make it work is make it not be able to go through solid surfaces. This can make it stronger on all maps, so you can clear out an entire room on a two-story map or an indoor map, but you can't, go on to the next room. And this will make it stronger on outdoor maps. So you say you have a biopod on one side of a tree and another side of a tree. You have to get like a certain angle to be able to disable them both. I think that'd be very useful as well. Another final thing I think should happen is add the brown add-on, which reduces the biopod disable time into base kit. 60 seconds is far too long. People don't really consider how long 60 seconds actually is in a game of Dead by Daylight. So I feel like reducing that would just make the power a bit more useful, and honestly kind of make it a little bit towards the more gen watching But with the add-on, it's still like 45 seconds, so I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. And yeah, with all the other changes, I just think the power will be nicer. And I really like the skin. I really do like the skin, but I think the power is just too weak, mostly because of the EMPs being too powerful. Uh, and I hope they come to address this issue. I feel like they kind of released it in too safe as a state. It kind of went on to the PTB with a really, 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 really safe rate. They kind of nerfed the EMPs a bit more still and buffed the killer, but I still feel like they were being too safe. So I think they really just need to look at what they've got and, uh, you know, buff it so it's a nicer killer that actually has a power that's usable. Other than that, yeah, that's basically all I really wanted to say. I really hope they make some changes so this killer's good again. Oh, good. Sorry, I don't know why I said again. Make the killer good, and yeah, thanks for watching, I guess. Uh, See you guys soon.